Hollywood, 1961, the biggest party of the year. The mansion was filled with the most famous faces in the world. Actors, directors, producers, studio executives. Everyone who mattered was there, drinking champagne, making deals, pretending to like each other. In one corner of the room stood Rock Hudson, 6 feet 4 inches of American masculinity, the most popular leading man in Hollywood. Women across the country were in love with him. Men wanted to be him. He had everything: the looks, the talent, the fame, the money, and a secret that could destroy it all. In another corner stood Dean Martin, glass in hand, cigarette between his fingers, that lazy smile on his face. The king of cool, the man who seemed to float through life without a care in the world. Their eyes met across the room. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. Or understanding. The understanding that comes when two people are both wearing masks, both hiding something, both performing versions of themselves that the world expects to see. Dean raised his glass slightly. A small salute. Rock nodded back. Neither of them knew it yet, but that moment was the beginning of one of the most unlikely and most important friendships in Hollywood history. A friendship that would be kept secret for decades. A friendship that would save one man's career. A friendship that would break one man's heart. This is the story of Dean Martin and Rock Hudson. The story that Hollywood never wanted you to know. To understand what Rock Hudson was hiding, you need to understand what Hollywood was like in 1961. It was a different world. A world where image was everything. A world where the studios controlled every aspect of their stars' lives. What they wore, who they dated, what they said in interviews, where they were seen, and who they were seen with. And there was one rule above all others. One rule that was never spoken, but always understood. You could not be gay. Not in Hollywood. Not in 1961. Not if you wanted a career. Being gay wasn't just frowned upon. It was illegal in most states. It was considered a mental illness by the medical establishment. It was grounds for immediate termination of contracts. It was career death. Studios had entire departments dedicated to managing their stars' images. They arranged fake dates. They orchestrated fake romances. They planted stories in magazines. And when rumors started about a star's sexuality, they did whatever it took to crush them. Sometimes that meant paying off witnesses. Sometimes it meant threatening journalists. Sometimes it meant arranging quick marriages to unsuspecting women who had no idea what they were getting into. Rock Hudson knew this system intimately. He had been living inside it for years. Rock had known he was gay since he was a teenager, but he also knew he wanted to be an actor. And in 1950s America, those two things were incompatible. So he made a choice. He would hide who he was. He would play the part. He would become the man Hollywood wanted him to be. And he was good at it. He was so good at it that he became the biggest movie star in the world. But the hiding took its toll. The constant vigilance. The fear that someone would find out. The loneliness of never being able to be yourself. The shame that society told him he should feel about who he loved. Rock Hudson was surrounded by people and completely alone. Until Dean Martin. The friendship started slowly. A conversation at a party. A drink at a restaurant. A round of golf at a country club. On the surface, they had nothing in common. Dean was Italian from a working-class family in Ohio. Rock was from Illinois with a completely different background. Dean was part of the Rat Pack, the coolest group in entertainment. Rock was a romantic leading man, starring in melodramas and comedies. But beneath the surface, they recognized something in each other. They were both performers, not just on screen, but in life. They both understood what it meant to create a persona, to hide behind a mask, to show the world a version of yourself that wasn't quite real. Dean hid behind his drunk act, the lazy eyes, the slurred speech, the glass always in hand. It was a performance, a way of keeping people at arm's length, a way of never having to be fully present, fully vulnerable, fully himself. Rock hid behind his leading man image, the perfect smile, the perfect body, the perfect dates with beautiful women. It was a performance, a way of surviving in a world that would destroy him if it knew the truth. They never talked about it directly. That wasn't how men communicated in 1961. But they understood each other. And in that understanding, they found a friendship. The first time Dean showed he knew about rock was at a party in 1962. A group of men were standing around telling crude jokes. The conversation turned to rumors about certain actors in Hollywood. Someone mentioned Rock Hudson's name with a sneer and an implication. The group laughed. Dean didn't laugh. "You know what I've noticed?" Dean said, his voice casual, his eyes anything but. "The guys who spend the most time talking about what other men do in private are usually the ones with the most to hide." The group went quiet. Dean took a sip of his drink and looked directly at the man who had made the comment. "Just something I've noticed." The conversation moved on, but the message was clear. Rock Hudson was off limits. Later that night, Rock found Dean alone on the terrace. "You didn't have to do that," Rock said quietly. Dean shrugged. "Do what?" Rock studied him for a moment. Dean's face revealed nothing. That was his gift. You never knew what he was thinking. "Thank you," Rock finally said. Dean turned to look at him. For just a second, the mask slipped. His eyes were serious, kind, understanding. "Nothing to thank me for, pal. A man's private life is his own business. Anyone who thinks different can take it up with me." He patted Rock on the shoulder and walked back inside, leaving Rock standing on the terrace with tears in his eyes. It was the first time anyone in Hollywood had stood up for him. The first time anyone had acknowledged, even indirectly, what he was hiding. The first time he felt like someone was on his side. From that night on, Dean Martin and Rock Hudson were friends. Real friends. The kind of friends who didn't need to talk about everything. The kind of friends who simply showed up. Over the years, Dean protected Rock in ways that no one ever knew about. When gossip columnists started sniffing around Rock's personal life, Dean would invite Rock to high-profile double dates. Dean and his wife, Rock, and whatever actress the studio had arranged for him to be seen with. The photos would run in magazines and the rumors would quiet down. When a blackmailer approached Rock with threats to expose him, Dean found out about it. No one knows exactly what Dean did, but the blackmailer suddenly left town and was never heard from again. Rock never asked questions. Dean never volunteered information. When Rock's arranged marriage to Phyllis Gates fell apart after 3 years, and whispers started again, Dean made sure Rock was seen at Rat Pack events. Surrounded by the coolest men in Hollywood. Associated with Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, Joey Bishop. The ultimate masculine stamp of approval. Dean never asked for anything in return. He never made Rock feel like he owed him. He never used his knowledge as leverage or power. He just protected his friend. Years later, Rock was asked by a confidant why Dean Martin, of all people, had become such a close friend. Rock thought about it for a long time. Dean understood something that most people don't, Rock finally said. He understood that everyone has something they're hiding. Everyone has some part of themselves that they can't show the world. And instead of judging people for their secrets, he just accepted it. He accepted me. Not the movie star, not the image. Me. Rock paused. Do you know how rare that is? To be accepted for who you actually are? In this town? In this business? Dean Martin was the only person who ever made me feel like I didn't have to pretend, even though we never talked about it directly, even though he never said the words. I knew, and he knew I knew, and that was enough. The friendship continued through the 1960s and into the 1970s. They played golf together. They had dinners together. They spent holidays together. To the outside world, they were just two famous actors who happened to be friends. No one suspected the depth of their bond. Dean's children remembered Rock coming to family gatherings. He was Uncle Rock to them. A kind, gentle man who always had time to play with the kids, who always brought thoughtful gifts, who seemed to genuinely enjoy being part of their family. Dina Martin, Dean's daughter, later recalled, Rock was different when he was with us. More relaxed, more himself. My father had that effect on people. He made them feel safe. And I think for Rock, who spent his whole life being careful, being guarded, being afraid, our home was one of the few places he could let his guard down. But the world was changing, and not for the better. In the early 1980s, a new disease emerged. It didn't have a name at first. They called it gay cancer, or gay plague. The medical establishment called it GRID, gay-related immune deficiency. Eventually, it would be named AIDS, and it was killing people. Young men, mostly. Gay men. They would get sick, waste away, and die. And society, rather than responding with compassion, responded with fear and hatred. AIDS patients were shunned, abandoned by their families, fired from their jobs, evicted from their homes, left to die alone. The gay community, already marginalized, became even more isolated, and men like Rock Hudson, who had spent their lives hiding, watched with horror as their secret became even more dangerous. In 1984, Rock Hudson was diagnosed with AIDS. He had been feeling tired for months, losing weight, getting sick more often. When the diagnosis came, it was a death sentence. There was no treatment, no hope, just a slow, painful decline. Rock told almost no one. He continued working. He continued smiling for cameras. He continued pretending everything was fine. Because admitting he had AIDS meant admitting he was gay, and he still couldn't do that. Even now, even dying. But he told Dean. He had to tell someone. The burden of carrying this secret alone on top of all the other secrets was too much. And if there was one person in the world Rock trusted, it was Dean Martin. They met at Dean's house, just the two of them. Rock had lost weight. His face was gaunt. He looked 10 years older than he was. Dean poured 2 drinks. He handed one to Rock. "You look like hell," Dean said. "What's going on?" Rock took the drink but didn't sip it. His hands were trembling. "I'm sick, Dean." "Sick how?" Rock couldn't look at him. He stared at the floor, at the drink in his hands, anywhere but at his friend's face. "I have AIDS." The room was silent. Dean didn't gasp. He didn't recoil. He didn't do any of the things Rock had feared. He just sat down next to his friend. "How long?" "They don't know. Months. Maybe a year." Dean was quiet for a long moment. "What do you need?" Rock finally looked up. Dean's face showed no judgment, no fear, no disgust, just concern, just friendship. "I don't know," Rock admitted. "I don't know what I need. I couldn't keep carrying this alone. I needed someone to know." Dean nodded. "Now I know. So you're not carrying it alone anymore." Rock broke down. For the first time since his diagnosis, he wept. Great, heaving sobs that shook his entire body. 20 years of friendship, 20 years of silent understanding, 20 years of Dean protecting him without ever asking for anything in return. And now this. Dean didn't try to stop him. He didn't offer empty platitudes or false hope. He just sat there, his hand on Rock's shoulder, letting his friend grieve. When the tears finally subsided, Dean spoke. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to fight this thing as long as you can, and I'm going to be here. Whatever you need, whenever you need it. You understand?" Rock nodded. "And Rock, this doesn't change anything. You're still my friend. You're still welcome in my home. My kids still love you. Nothing changes." In 1985, Rock Hudson became the first major celebrity to publicly acknowledge having AIDS. He didn't choose to go public. A tabloid had gotten hold of the story. His publicist told him they were going to run it regardless. So Rock decided to make the announcement himself, on his own terms. The reaction was immediate and mixed. Some people responded with compassion. Others responded with cruelty. The same Hollywood that had made him a star now distanced itself from him. Events he was supposed to attend suddenly were canceled. Phone calls weren't returned. Friends disappeared. But not Dean. Dean Martin called Rock the day the news broke. "How you holding up, pal?" "It's been a rough day." I bet. Listen, I'm having some people over this weekend. You should come. Rock was silent. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Dean, you don't have to do that. I understand if you want to keep your distance. People are going to talk. Let them talk. Since when do I care what people think? This is different. This is AIDS. People are terrified. Your career. My career? Dean laughed. Rock, I've been in this business for 40 years. If my career can't survive being friends with you, then it's not worth having. Rock couldn't speak. So I'll see you this weekend? Yeah, Rock finally managed. Yeah, you'll see me this weekend. In a time when AIDS patients were being abandoned by everyone, Dean Martin stood by his friend. He didn't make a public statement about it. He didn't call press conferences or give interviews. That wasn't his style. He just kept being Rock's friend. Openly. Visibly. Letting the world see that Rock Hudson was still welcome in his life. It was a quiet kind of courage. The kind that doesn't make headlines but matters more than all the grand gestures in the world. Rock Hudson died on October 2nd, 1985. He was 59 years old. Dean Martin was at home when he got the call. He hung up the phone and sat in his living room for a long time, not moving, not speaking. His daughter Deanna found him there an hour later. Dad? Are you okay? Dean didn't answer right away. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Rock died. Deanna sat down next to her father. She had known Rock her whole life. He was family. I'm so sorry, Dad. Dean shook his head slowly. You know what kills me? That he spent his whole life hiding. His whole life pretending to be someone he wasn't. Because the world told him who he was, wasn't acceptable, wasn't allowed. He looked at his daughter with tears in his eyes. What kind of world makes a man hide who he loves? What kind of world makes a person ashamed of their own heart? Deanna didn't have an answer. Rock was one of the best men I ever knew, Dean continued. Kindest, gentlest soul. And he spent 60 years apologizing for existing. 60 years afraid that people would find out who he really was and stop loving him. He wiped his eyes. I hope wherever he is now, he doesn't have to hide anymore. I hope he finally gets to just be himself. Dean Martin attended Rock Hudson's funeral. He sat in the front row. He didn't hide in the back. He didn't worry about what people would think or what it might do to his image. He just showed up for his friend one last time. After the funeral, a reporter approached Dean. Mr. Martin, were you aware of Rock Hudson's lifestyle? Dean looked at the reporter with cold eyes. I was aware that Rock Hudson was my friend. That's all that matters. But didn't it bother you? Knowing that he was what? Dean interrupted. A good man? A loyal friend? A person who deserved to be treated with dignity and respect? The reporter stammered. Dean stepped closer. Let me tell you something, pal. Rock Hudson was more of a man than most people I've met in this business. He faced things that would break most people, and he did it with grace. So don't you dare stand here at his funeral and try to reduce his entire life to one thing. He was a human being. A complicated, beautiful, brave human being. And I was proud to call him my friend. Dean walked away, leaving the reporter speechless. That quote never made it into any newspaper. The reporter knew better than to publish it. But people who were there that day remembered. They remembered Dean Martin, the king of cool, defending his friend's honor even in death. In the years that followed, Dean rarely spoke about Rock publicly. That wasn't his way. But those close to him knew how much the loss affected him. Deanna Martin later wrote about her father's friendship with Rock. My father believed that a person's private life was their own business. He never understood why the world cared so much about who people loved. Love is love, he would say. The world needs more of it, not less. His friendship with Rock wasn't about making a statement or being an ally before that word even existed. It was simply about seeing a person for who they were and accepting them completely. That's what my father did. That's who he was. He protected Rock not because he wanted credit or praise, but because that's what friends do. You protect each other. You stand up for each other. You don't abandon each other when the world turns against them. My father lost a lot of friends over the years. But losing Rock was different. Rock was someone my father had chosen to protect, chosen to stand by, chosen to love in his own quiet way. And when Rock died, a part of my father went with him. The story of Dean Martin and Rock Hudson is not a story about Hollywood glamour or celebrity friendships. It's a story about what it means to truly accept another person, to see past the masks and the performances and the images, and to love the real human being underneath. It's a story about courage, not the loud, dramatic kind of courage that makes headlines. The quiet kind, the kind that shows up day after day, year after year, without asking for recognition or reward. It's a story about the cost of hiding, the toll it takes on a person to spend their entire life pretending to be someone they're not. And it's a story about the gift of being seen, truly seen, by even one person. Rock Hudson spent most of his life alone, even when he was surrounded by people. But he had Dean Martin. And that friendship, that one true friendship, made all the difference. Dean Martin never asked for credit for what he did. He never wrote about it in memoirs or talked about it in interviews. He simply lived it, day after day, year after year. A quiet act of love that lasted over 2 decades. That's the Dean Martin story that should be remembered. Not the songs or the movies or the Rat Pack. The man who saw his friend for who he really was and loved him anyway. The man who understood that everyone is hiding something. And instead of judging, he simply accepted. The man who proved that real friendship has no conditions, no limits, no exceptions. In a world that told Rock Hudson he was wrong for existing, Dean Martin told him he was worthy of love. And that made all the difference.